Hello, Ben here. Hope you're well and welcome to episode 11 of Benjy's Cafe podcast. Joining me in Benjy's Cafe this week is the actor Vivien Parry. Most recently, Vivien starred as Jane in Matt Hartley's The Wife of Cyncoed at Cardiff Sherman Theatre. Vivien played Fraulein Schneider in the hit West End show Cabaret at the Playhouse Theatre London, the most awarded musical revival in Olivier's history, and has also appeared in Les Miserables, Top Hat and Mamma Mia. On the big screen, Vivien appeared in Disney's Beauty and the Beast, and credits for the Royal Shakespeare Company include Twelfth Night and Christmas Carol, directed by Rachel Kavanagh. And on April 1st, 2024, Vivien reached 17 years of sobriety.
That day, that decision to stop drinking was one of the best decisions I've made in my life. And please God, one day at a time, I've managed to stay sober every day since. And yeah, it's amazing.
Vivien shares her recovery story and the importance of kindness and compassion towards oneself. It's a fascinating episode. Pop the kettle on and enjoy listening. Welcome to Benjy's Cafe podcast, Vivien Parry.
Good morning, Ben. What a lovely introduction. Very nice. You've done your research.
Well, yes, of course. It's so lovely to see you and to chat to you, Vivien. And I just want to say huge love and congratulations. When we were setting up the podcast, a bit of email tennis going on. You mentioned that it was on that day, on the 1st of April, you were 17 years sober. And I just want to say congratulations. That must be a wonderful feeling, Vivien.
It is without doubt the best thing I've ever done with my life. Without a shadow of a doubt, yeah. And I was somebody who loved drinking until I didn't love drinking, was always in the pub, grew up Welsh, grew up in just rugby and sports. And so to drink was it was as simple as breathing. But to stop was, I drank until it just didn't do me any favours. It took me to a very, very dark place. And actually that day, that decision to stop drinking was one of the best decisions I've made in my life. And please God, one day at a time, I've managed to stay sober every day since. And yeah, it's amazing. And it's amazing how time flies. Then here I am 17 years sober.
It's fantastic. And did you have an inkling, Vivien? What was the length of time from thinking, that moment when you think I've got an issue here to making that wonderful decision to say, I've had enough?
I think for me, it was a slow drip, and some people are really lucky. I got sober when I was 40. How old was I? I'm 60. I've just turned 60. God, I can't believe I'm 60.
You're not. Are you 60?
Jesus Christ. I know.
Oh my God. What's the secret? You're looking great.
Don't drink. Stop drinking. It'll change your life. But I think it was a slow drip for me. It was very, very slow. I liken my drinking to being in an abusive relationship. And it starts off, it's all bells and whistles to start with. And it's wonderful and seductive and full of colour and light. Because, listen, sometimes drinking and being with people who are drinking, it's fantastic. I had some of the best experiences of my life drinking and being in theatre, especially working in the theatre. We crave, most of us theatricals crave colour, technicolor, experience, and then you add booze on top of that. That's the only way I can describe it, that I was always seeking to live life beyond technicolor. And for many years, booze did that. But actually also, it made me make extraordinarily bad decisions. Unbelievably appalling decision. I also struggle, and I think a lot of us do in this industry anyway, but I do struggle with anxiety. I've always had low-level panic all my life.
Yeah.
I'm just born with low-level panic. And I think anxiety is very, very real for a lot of us, for a lot of the human race. We just do a very good job at disguising it, pretending that we've all got our shit together. And I think for me, the anxiety levels were going up, so I would drink more. And I just couldn't get rid of the terror and the feeling of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, bewilderment, terror. I would wake up in the middle of the night terrified. I would wake up in the morning terrified. I would spend the day terrified. I would spend the evening terrified. This horrendous knot. Yeah. Addiction is very weird. It sort of boxed me into a corner. And I just couldn't get out of it. I could not get out of that corner. And so you drink because you feel terrible, you feel horrendous, and you hate yourself, and I can say this, and I don't mean this in a kind of to say this lightly. I don't say this lightly, but I felt very suicidal. I felt the simplest thing for me would just be to kill myself, because actually I'm such a terrible person. So that's where my drinking took me. But the day I realised the jig was up was I was in such a state. I mean, that's what my daily life was like. And then you put your show face on.
Oh,
I was doing Mamma Mia at the time. I was playing Donna in Mamma Mia. And I genuinely don't know. I don't know how I did it. I look back at that time and the way I was treating myself and the carnage that was going on in my life. And then you'd go on stage and you do that show, which is, and it was like being, and again, I don't say this lightly with people who have mental health problems or issues, but it was like being a schizophrenic. So there were these two sides of me, and addiction divides you. Addiction divides yourself. And so there was the shadow, the dark that I was living in, the shadow and the dark, and then there's the light, which is your life force trying to save you. And I went into therapy and lied all the way through my therapy until, because the therapist asked me, beautiful man called Arnold, beautiful man. And he asked me about my drinking and I lied. I just lied. I said, I just need a glass of red wine. And finally I got honest. And I remember my last drink was on March the 31st, 2007. And I went to see him on April the 1st. I had a session with him and I got honest because I couldn't remember what had happened the night before. I knew it wasn't good. And he just, bless his heart, and this isn't everybody's story, but this is my story. He just said, my dear girl, there is a solution to this. And I said, well, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it is. To say, I think I'm an alcoholic and I think I've got a difficult relationship with alcohol, and it leads me down these horrendous paths and these horrendous choices. And not only the choices that I make, but the way I feel about myself, which is I just felt I was the most worthless human being. And I mean, anybody who's had addiction will possibly identify with those feelings. And he just said, my dear girl, there is an organisation called Alcoholics Anonymous. And again, this isn't everybody's story, but this is my story. And he said, and this is before mobile phones. No, I did have a mobile phone, but before the mass of the internet, And I went home and I got a copy of the Yellow Pages and I looked up meetings and I found a meeting where I was living at the Priory in Southwest London. I was living in that area. And that night I went to my first meeting. So that's, how I got here. That's how I got here. But it took it was just that one moment of saying, I think I've got a problem, and admitting that I had a problem and admitting that booze cost me more than my wallet. It cost me everything. It cost me a marriage. It cost me my home. It cost me my self-respect. It cost me. It nearly killed me, And it is extraordinary how, as addicts, we want to throw ourselves on the rocks. It's. I don't know whether that makes any sense to you, but it's this curious, weird self-sabotage that a lot of us have. And then if we're lucky and we have that moment of grace and surrender, and we go, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And that, oh my God, Ben, that feeling of there was a chink in a window and I crawled my weary, destroyed body through that window. And then I didn't let go. I didn't let go. And so I've been there ever since. And it's just, and that's not to say that life is not unbelievably painful and hard. In fact, I think sometimes it's even worse. It still beats the alternative.
Completely commend your bravery, Vivien, to have that moment of clarity to think, right, I've got to do something about this, to pick up the Yellow Pages. And like you said, then it's hard, isn't it? Because now there's so much awareness on social media, online, about the benefits of an alcohol-free life. But did you feel quite alone in that moment, or just ready to embrace the support that was there?
I felt so alone in my alcoholism, in my addiction. The loneliness I felt beforehand was so awful that actually the vulnerability and nakedness I felt afterwards, I was happy to have that rather than that awful, that bleak. I mean, it's so bleak. And you spend your life living under a rock. That's what it feels like. And I remember going to my first sober audition, and it's one of the most terrifying. I didn't get the job. I didn't even want the job. But I just thought, I've got to do this. Got to go to this audition. I walked into a room and I felt I had to sing, and I felt like I didn't have any skin. I felt like
just raw.
Everything was so raw. And I'd forgotten how to live. I'd forgotten how to be able to eat properly. I'd forgotten how to, I was so used to living in chaos and carnage and self-hatred that actually that first audition where I went in and I thought, exactly like you said, I felt a bit more livelier, energy levels were up. I felt like I was sort of weirdly on fire, but also unbelievably naked.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
It's lovely to have that feeling that it's okay to be yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when you do become sober and you start to discover that, it is scary and it's baby steps, but when you really tune into your core and your real self, it's so reassuring, isn't it, to know that actually I'm an okay kind of person.
It's you lose your essence. And I think one of the greatest things that I've got from recovery is that my spirit and my core, I think with all of us, is fundamentally good and true and kind and loving and loyal. Yeah, it's a curious thing, addiction. It never leaves you. You get sober and you think, oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Just get on with my life now. But actually, if you are an addict and if you have that nature in you, it never leaves you. So then you have to find ways of, managing and dealing and embracing the good side of being an addict. There are many good things about being an addict when you're sober, when you're clean and when you're sober. Because
that's so interesting you say that, Vivien, because just chatting to you now, it's putting a smile on my face, just knowing that you've been through the journey, that the people I'm talking to increasingly on the podcast are having, similar experiences in life, and just knowing that the importance of talking about it and knowing that there are people out there who are in the same boat, especially creatives, like you mentioned. You're just fueling that creative flame when you're applying the booze down your throat. And in that environment, it is difficult. It is a lonely existence, and the juxtaposition of having that disease, that addiction, and then going on stage, tits and teeth. It's very hard to balance, and it's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But just talking to you, and increasingly the more people I talk to, and hopefully the more people listening to the podcast, knowing that there's help there, there's support there, people survive and flourish.
But for me, putting down the booze was not enough. For me, I knew that if I put down the drink, I knew that I would then have to look at all the reasons why I drank.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was not enough for me to just stop drinking and then become what we term in Alcoholics Anonymous, what we term as a dry drunk. Because unless you deal with the root causes of one's addiction, again, I'm not telling anybody, I hope nobody thinks I'm telling anybody what to do, because I also know as addicts, the minute somebody says you should do this, an addict will go, don't you tell me what to do, I'll do the complete opposite. So they are literally just suggestions, but it was very strongly suggested to me that, find a recovery program, whatever that is for you. And for me, it was AA. Find somebody to help you work through a 12-step program, because that is about changing, acknowledging, forgiving, and changing root patterns of behaviour. But the support is there. There is so much support. But most importantly, talking, because addiction is a disease of isolation, and it doesn't want you talking, and it doesn't want you sharing, and it doesn't want you saying how you truly feel. It just wants you to listen to the really nasty little voice.
Little bugger.
Yeah, have a drink.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to work. Nothing's going to work out. You might as well have a drink or a drug or whatever.
Yeah. And you mentioned isolation there, Vivien. Similarly, looking back at some of my darker times, and maybe it's because I'm a creative as well, and you do just think, right, if life is this bad, then I'm just going to, curtain down, end of show, finale. I've had that thought more than more than once, twice,
Yeah.
3 times over the years.
Yeah.
And that feeling of sometimes not even wanting to speak to family, to loved ones, to friends who care.
Yeah.
And it's just the beauty of sharing, isn't it, that's so important. And we mentioned different routes of sobriety. I'm getting my support from people like yourself through the podcast, through chatting to friends and being really open about it. And at the moment, that's good for me. That's okay. But there are so many different routes, aren't there? And everybody is completely different. And it's funny you mentioned being in the grips of the addiction during Mamma Mia, because I remember I did Mamma Mia on the tour, international tour, covered dads around. I would have been the guy playing backgammon with you in the dodgy fisherman's hat, looking like a very tall Midlands-based Joe Orton. And then I played Sam for Royal Caribbean when it moved out onto the cruise ship. Yeah. But I remember being so racked with anxiety one performance, literally thinking the words coming and going, not being able to almost walk. You think, my God, this is awful. Just having the feeling and the joy of knowing that the next performance now, whenever, hopefully back on stage in pantomime. I've just done pantomime, played my first Dame Vivien. But
fantastic!
I was about 8'4" in my heels and wig. But it was just the joy of being sober and being able to react there in the moment. Yeah. When you look back at your career before you became sober, Vivien, do you think it slowed your progress down?
No, I don't think so. No, it is impossible to say. So I don't know. And also, I've had the most amazing careers. There's nothing. Of course, there are things I would love to do, and there are things I wish I had done. Actually, the bottom line is I've had an extraordinary career, and I've worked practically non-stop, and I've played major roles in major shows, and and for me had a butterfly career. So I had a career across film and television and radio and musicals and straight plays and all of that malarkey. So I don't think so. I think where it held me back was my relationships. My relationships with people. But I have friends in my life to this day who I've known since I was 8 years old. So there've been people. But I will say the quality of my friendships and my relationships since I got sober are so much. There's just so much better, and I'm able to be so much more honest, and the quality of my relationships has changed, and the quality of my friendships. And I think when I was, boozing and partying and blah blah blah, and behaving like a lunatic, I think you take those relationships a bit more for granted, and I've never been somebody who's had surface relationships. I think part of my problem is I've always wanted to have these intense experiences that, of course, are sometimes unsustainable. And but actually, my friendships, even at my worst, have always been amazing. I've always had extraordinary friendships, male and female friendships. And when things are really tricky, those are the things you find out who your friends are. You find out who your friends are when you get sober, because you lose a lot of fair weather friends. Yeah. Because all of a sudden, you're not Ben who goes partying and let's go out and get absolutely hammered. It's like, where's that Ben gone? I have a rule now. If I go to a party or a gathering, if I hear the same story 2 times, 3 times from the same person, I'm off. I'm gone.
Yeah, you're done.
And when people go, don't go, it's like they literally, when I leave, they within 2 seconds will have forgotten that I was ever in the room.
Yeah.
So I've learnt ways to keep myself safe.
And isn't it joyous that moment when you're home and you're sober, and hopefully it's been a great social experience, but you're just in control, aren't you? And you're ready to go again the next day. It's such a nice bloody feeling.
And I was told very early on, be honest with yourself while you're there. Are you there to get some vicarious thrill out of people drinking, or are you there to bring something to the party, to go, to show your face, to be supportive, and then know why you're there, and then know when to go, when to leave? Yeah. And that is because again, I was always somebody who just wanted to party, and then let's go out somewhere else, and then dance on the table, and then do this, and it's just, and there were many, many wonderful occasions, but also just nah. And going back to those panic attacks and that fear, I had one of my worst panic attacks and fear on stage in the West End, playing Dono, Mamma Mia. My God. And I knew it was
Viv.
coming, but I knew it was coming, and I couldn't, and I just thought, well, this has got this, because I was lying about everything. I was lying about my life. I knew I'd made a catastrophic decision. I knew I destroyed something, and I was in the grips. This for me was like the final grips of my addiction. And I walked on stage. I came on stage, walked on stage, opened the door, and I just thought, this is the night.
This is
There's
it.
2,000 people there. I'm walking down the steps, and I'm walking to my friends who were playing. My God, literally, I'm so old. I can't remember the characters' names. Rosie and
Tanya.
That's it.
Is that right? Yeah.
Beautiful. Laura Mulcahy and Kim Ismay, two beautiful women.
Oh, Kim, yeah. Kim's amazing.
Beautiful. Yeah, Kim was my Tanya, and a beautiful Australian called Lara, and I thought, this is it. I don't know. I know tonight's the night, and it still makes me feel sick, you know. And I stood there, and I wasn't drunk, but I had been drunk the night before, and I was jangling. I was shaking and jangling.
You were full up,
absolutely full up of anxiety, fear, self-loathing. I knew I'd made these catastrophic decisions. It was so horrendous, and I took a deep breath, and I just thought, nah. And I remember my friend Lara looking at me, and she said, you went grey.
Really?
And your pupils just dilated. And she thought, oh my God, she's gone. I've got to help her out here. Or just she doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know, you know. And she fed me my first line. And I managed to speak. But it was that moment of, and I'm sure people you've interviewed, but it was that moment of, I was just about to say, I'm ever so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I can't do this. I'm going to go and kill myself.
My God.
I'm laughing about it now, but it really was. It really was.
That was the reality, wasn't it?
I think I'm done. I think I'm going to check out now, because I can't do my job. This is a job I've wanted to do for so long, and I can't do it. But she fed me this first line, but I spent the entire show. Christ, I spent the entire show going, don't know what my next line is. Don't know what my next line is.
Oh, man.
And Donna has 13 songs to sing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like The Dads, which is 3 scenes and half a song, is it? You're the spine of that show, right?
I literally don't know what the next line is. I work all night, I work all day, but don't know what the next line is. Don't know what the next line is. Don't know what the next line is.
Bless
Jesus. You. Anyway, I did get through it, and then I went to my dressing room, and I went home, and I got absolutely hammered, and it made no difference. It was, and again, I'm laughing about it now, but it is extraordinary, the places we go to, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't live like that anymore. God Almighty. And I've just finished a one-woman show. I've just done a one-woman show, and the fear and anxiety and dread were,
oh man,
unbelievable. But what I now do is, I don't try and push them all away. I just say, all right.
Yeah.
Hello, fear. Hello, anxiety. Hello, dread. Literally, we all walk on there together. And when you're on your own doing a one-woman show, you just think, come on, all the good bits, all the bad bits, come on, off we go.
Yeah.
Because the more we push, the more we say, I'm not frightened. God's sake, pull yourself together.
Yeah.
Your fear is just going to go, I'm still here.
Yeah. And they're there with you, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I was going to mention the wife of Cyncoed. I hope that I pronounced that correct.
Cyncoed, very nice.
Is that okay? 8 out of 10, Vivien, would you say?
I'd say a solid 8.
Solid 8. That's the name of my new album. Ben Harlow, a solid 8. What an experience, directed by Hannah Noon, by Matt Hartley at the Sherman Theatre in Cardiff, Vivien. I've been chatting to Bob Goulding on the podcast, who played Eric Morecambe in the one-man play Morecambe.
Yeah.
And he was saying, what a challenge, and also quite a lonely experience. Did you find that? Because it's literally just you up there with the words.
Yeah, it is bizarre. I've done a couple of one-woman shows, and I did one about Shakespeare's wife, Anne Hathaway, and that was beautiful. I've been sober 3 years when I did that, but this one was extraordinary. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever done. One of the most beautiful jobs I've ever done. It was one of those ones, and you know, all of us as performers, we spend, I don't know about you, but I spend my life going, I can't do this anymore. I hate this industry. I can't do it anymore. I hate this industry. Why am I doing this? I've done this for 35, maybe 40 years. And then, and you go for auditions and you don't get them, and not only do you not get them, you don't hear back, which is just, give us a yes or no. Just have some manners.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you go through all of that, and then occasionally something just pops up, and it was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. And I think the reason why it was because I've also just come up of tail end of a really brutal divorce. So I got married in sobriety and I got divorced in sobriety.
Right.
And talk about if ever you were going to pick up a drink, those seminal events, and having grief. My father died when I was sober, and all that.
Gosh.
But all of it's life. It's life. It's the gritty bit of life. So you go through all of those experiences, and you stay sober, and you feel your feelings, and then occasionally you get these little blips of gifts, absolute gift. And this job came about because the director and the executive producer at the Sherman had been to see Cabaret. So you never know. You just never know who's... Yeah. You just never know. This is and this industry is, when the work is good, that's the thing that keeps you in. And this job was extraordinary, and it was beautiful, and it was about a woman in her 60s who's dumped by her husband, and where do you go? Where do you go when you're told you're not sexy anymore, you're not hot anymore? Where do you go when your kids are grown up? What do you do? How do you live? And it was an extraordinary experience. It wasn't lonely. It was really interesting because you create a cast of thousands in your head, and you're on stage with all of those people.
Yeah.
And you become very reliant on your stage management team. And I had the most incredible, unbelievable stage management team. And it was a new play as well. So the writer was there a lot. I mean, he's such a big, he's going to be a huge, hot writer. I mean, he's amazing, And this man in his 40s has written this play about a woman in her 60s, He's got a series with Channel 4 and Netflix and this, that and the other. So it was such a joy to do something with a writer who you just think, this bloke's going to be, absolutely massive. And Hannah is a young director in her 30s. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So it was an extraordinarily joyful experience, but it was also, what I missed was being able to gossip.
Yeah,
If you had a good day, if you had a good day. And that gossip and that wonderful, there is nothing like there's just nothing like backstage, is there? You don't get it on a film set. It's such a wonderful
place, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't get it on a film set. You don't get it on television sets. You don't get it in. There's nowhere else than the bunker, backstage.
And being involved in a production, Vivien, you're there from the onset. You have an input. Is that a very different reward to joining a long runner? We've mentioned Mamma Mia, but you've been in Top Hat and joined the cast of Les Mis as well. Is it? It must be more rewarding.
Well, I think what it is, because I originated Top Hat, so I originated that role, so that was just bliss, So. There is nothing quite like originating roles. Half a Sixpence, I originated that role. So there's nothing quite like originating roles, because you do know that if it becomes a hit and it becomes a long-running show, that your print is the print.
Is there?
Of course, that's how every actor really wants to work. But there is also this extraordinary joy of stepping into a show that's established, because you find ways of bringing your own particular individual stamp to it that the other performer wouldn't have done. Well, that's the way I work anyway. I try to find my own way in rather than just, even if it's just a subtle thing, like, I don't know, you can't, in some shows you can't particularly change the moves, but you can change the whole energy of it. You can, you bring something unique, because we're all unique. And I sometimes think in those established shows, it's a wonderful gift to just do your job, not have to worry about, is the show going to run? Yeah. Oh my God, what are the critics going to think? Who cares what the bloody critics think? But you don't need all of that. You just literally, but there is a joy in being the person who creates that. And I do think, that this last job I've just done is is just one of the most extraordinary jobs I've ever done, and what a gift.
Beatrice, to be in Cardiff as well. What a city.
I loved it. I lived in Cardiff for years, and I worked in Wales for years, and I've got loads of friends there, and I had a whole other world, a whole other life there. And to be home, and my father's buried in a place called Ystrad, so I would go and visit, you know, he's with me all the time, you know, but I would go on a little pilgrimage, you know. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, my heart is in Wales. So it was just, I love Wales. I think there's so much exciting stuff coming out of Wales. It's, you know, the TV film capital of the bloody world at the moment. And it was just it was a joy. It was a joy.
Yeah.
But it was terrifying. And there is nowhere to go when you've got the fear. You have to just walk through it. And then afterwards, you have to go home and you have to find a way to just decompress, you know. And you talked about exercise, and for me, it's walking, it's yoga, it's swimming.
Yeah.
I want technicolor, I want vibrancy, I want intensity. And the reality is life sometimes is grey, and that's hard. That's hard for addicts because it's just like, where's my fix?
Yeah.
Sometimes I need, as this addict in recovery, you know, and again, everybody's journey is different. You know, mine is definitely a 12-step program. And, you know, all of the work that goes on with that is sometimes we need to unplug. So actually this weekend, I'm going away for 8 days on a silent retreat. And it's a spiritual retreat. And it's
amazing.
Because I know, for me, for this addict, that actually I can feel my levels are too high. Everything's too high at the moment. And it's a really unhealthy place for me to be. You know, I can feel that everything's like strung out.
Okay.
And that's just the way life is sometimes as freelancers, isn't it? You know, So
you just feel you're ready just for a moment to kind of reboot almost.
Yeah, to decompress.
Yeah.
To decompress and to go deeper in my particular recovery journey, my particular life, to go deeper spiritually. And so it's a retreat. I mean, that's a whole other podcast, but this is my journey of how I deal with life in sobriety, which is basically prayer and meditation, a daily program of prayer and meditation that I have. I don't do it like an addict, but I have to do it because it helps my sanity.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, occasionally, I have to go and unplug completely. So, like, no phones. You are allowed. There are moments of where you can have like a group check-in, but basically, it's 8 days of silence and prayer and meditation and sleep and rest, like a deep rest.
Yeah.
Because I do think the way I live my life and the way a lot of us live lives as freelancers is that we are constantly hustling. The constant hustle, the constant, if we're not doing a job, we're looking for the next job. We're looking for teaching, we're doing this. You know, and there are many other things I do as well. You know, I write and I'm retraining as a therapist. So I've got this whole other life that's going on in tandem with being an actor.
Yeah. But you're dead right when you are freelance, Vivien. The antennae's up, isn't it? Work.
Oh, all the time.
And it's exhausting. I love the fact you're placing such importance on just rest, on quiet. It's so important, isn't it? Because otherwise life's hectic.
It is, and it's so hard for us to do. It's so hard for freelancers and creatives to go, do you know what? For the next 8 days, the world will carry on spinning without me.
Yeah.
I can't wait just to unravel a little bit. And also I think hitting 60 is a very interesting time. It makes you recalibrate everything. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm in a period of recalibration. I love being an actor. I love it with a passion. I wouldn't still be doing it if I didn't love it. So it's, I think when you get to these seminal birthdays, you know, it's okay. This is a part of who I am. I never want to not be an actor, but this is not my whole life. It's not my whole life.
Yeah. It's just you can see, you completely appreciate who you are. And I think it's wonderful that you're continuing to learn about yourself, Vivien, and you're respecting that the body and mind does need rest. It's so important in this world.
Yeah, it is. It's important anywhere. But people with, I say normal, who the hell is normal?
Yeah,
but people
exactly.
who have slightly different structured lives. And I find it really offensive when I hear people say muggle jobs and things like that. It's so offensive because, you know, everybody's just doing their best to try and live an authentic life. For creators and freelancers, the constant stress of trying to hustle to get work can be really, really unhealthy on every single level, mentally, physically. And I know nobody makes us do this, and I know it's our choice. But part of me also believes that on a woo-woo level, that, you know, sometimes we're all born with different attributes, and that, thank God for us. Actually, thank God for creatives.
Yeah.
Where would the world be without us?
Oh,
you know?
Exactly. And it's lovely, especially now I'm sober and alcohol-free, Vivien. I love just being myself. I love the fact that I'm a bit of an odd bod, and I'm completely comfortable in that skin, and
Absolutely.
it's lovely. And what I love being in this skin within a creative environment, like Christmas pantomime, it was just wonderful. Just to be yourself. It's so calming and reassuring.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it's okay, for instance, to just go home, have a cup of tea.
I bloody love it.
Read a book.
Give me a 50-told duck down, Vivien. A bum, and I'm one happy sausage.
I know, exactly.
I love it.
I know, but really sort of be curious, I guess, about, so what was that about then? Why did I feel the need to drink, use, act in that particular... and I don't mean it in a kind of awful, self-indulgent way, but I just think you've got sober, you've got this extraordinary opportunity to completely reframe your life. But that doesn't go without curiosity and questioning about, so why did I?
Yeah.
What was it? What was it about? You know, because I know all the reasons why. I know all the reasons, and they still unfold. They still unfold. And it's
increasingly through therapy as well, Vivien. You realise, like you said, that alcohol is just fueling what's in there anyway, and it's addressing those problems, which you know I'm very grateful over the years that I'm doing, and it's
with love, but also with love and kindness and compassion. Because I don't know about you, but I know for me that when I was drinking, I really smashed myself to pieces and my self-esteem, and you know, but actually I can do the same in recovery. I can be very, very hard on myself. So it's my big journey with this is having to be kind to myself, learning to be kind to myself, and that's a very uncomfortable place for me to be, because I don't come from that. You've got to fight, and you've got to be hard, and you've got to push, and you've got to be perfect, and all of that stuff. And that can be crippling.
It's so lovely to chat to you. It's been a beautiful start to the day. I love my food. I like to finish the podcast with asking my guests, what's on the dinner menu tonight? Do you enjoy cooking? Do you have any plans?
What am I doing tonight? Do you know, I have to cook because I have to eat. It's not how I show love, and but I tell you what, I'm a great eater. So if somebody cooks me dinner, I'm a brilliant dinner guest. So, because I love my food as well, but cooking just is something I have to do to eat. So to be honest, I haven't even thought about it.
Nice. Yeah.
But going back to sort of what this podcast is about, you know, the reality is I woke up this morning without a hangover. I woke up this morning not knowing exactly where I was last night. I woke up this morning knowing that I hadn't offended anybody, that I hadn't behaved inappropriately. And I did my morning prayers and meditation. I did this. And then tonight, I know that I'll get to bed without, hopefully, offended anybody, done anything outrageous, not caused a car crash, not drunk drive, you know. I'll just behave like a half-decent human being.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly that. And I agree completely, just waking up hangover-free. Also, the productivity, Vivien. I've woken up, it's a nice, bright day, going to have a lovely experience at the theatre tonight and having a wonderful chat to you. It's just been such a lovely start to the day.
Yeah, it'd be brilliant.
I commend you on your 17-year sobriety. It's just wonderful, Vivien, and your career too. And I wish you all the love and success, and thank you so much for joining us in Benjy's Cafe.
Anybody who's struggling or new or thinking, oh my God, I can't do it, one day at a time, just one day at a time, and sometimes 1 hour, 1 minute at a time, you know, and if we just do that, all will be well.
Thanks for joining me in Benjy's Cafe. Hope you enjoyed listening to Vivien as much as I enjoyed chatting to her. Make sure you hit follow so every episode gets sent straight to your phone, no booking required, available wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget, a new episode every Tuesday. In episode 12, I'll be joined in Benjy's Cafe by performer and yoga and Pilates specialist Megan Barnes. How can we cope with the stress of modern day life? I'll get the kettle on. Sun's out here. Have a great day.